Folks, if I could have your attention, please continue eating, and our service will continue with beverage services while we talk. But thanks for being here again. I want to introduce Billy Webster. I've known Billy a long, long time. Billy's a native of Greenville and has done notable work in both business, government, and philanthropy. He's a graduate of Washington and Lee. He graduated summa cum laude. I graduated from Davidson College, thank the laude, but he got a different designation. He went to the University of Virginia Law School. His business experience includes owning and selling 27 Bojangles restaurants, founding Advance America, taking it public on the New York Stock Exchange for a while, and then it later went private again, and serving on boards of several local and other non-public companies. His governmental experience is impressive. He was the chief of staff for Governor Richard Riley when Riley chaired the presidential advance team for Bill Clinton. And then he was chief of staff for Governor Riley when he became Secretary of Education. He then became Director of Scheduling and Advance for President Clinton and held that position. His philanthropic activities are too numerous to list, and I thought, how am I going to say all of this? So I decided I would just mention the organizations of which he's been chair. That's enough to keep one busy, but there's more than this. But he's been chair of the Washington and Lee University Capital Campaign, member of the Board of Visitors of the MD Anderson Cancer Center, and chair of the South Carolina Nature Conservancy, and involved with many other nonprofit organizations. He does all of this, and he yet still has time to write a book. I mean, I'm busy. I think I'm busy. But I don't even have time to read a book. And Billy has time not only to read a book, but to write a book. So, Billy, I want to just ask you, I mean, how in the world did you find time to write a book, and what possessed you to undertake this project?
Well, Bob, first, we're old and dear friends, and I appreciate your facilitating this conversation. I also want to recognize I got two cousins back there, Jan and Conrad Ross. And the Allens, great friends of my parents. So thank you all for being here. Time to write a book. Really, the simple answer is COVID. I mean, I've been thinking about writing a book for a long time, and COVID intervened, and what else are you going to do? I mean, we were all sitting at home trying to figure out exactly what was going to happen for however long COVID was going to last. So my wife, Teresa, who's sitting right here in front, said, well, why don't you finally write that book that you've been talking about for 45 years? And so I did. And a brief explanation of why, because I think it's sort of fundamental to this conversation. I am not a creative person. I am not an author. I wrote a book only as a process of exorcism for a couple of things that had happened in my life that would not leave my brain unless I wrote about them. The first one, very insignificant, personal only to me, happened when I was 23 years old. Many of you may have heard either from your own experience or your children's experience, grandchildren's experience, an organization called the National Outdoor Leadership School in Lander, Wyoming. Knowles is sort of the preeminent provider of outdoor education and wilderness experience in the United States. It was set up 60 years ago to train outward bound instructors. And their signature course is a month or a summer-long course in the Wind River Range in central Wyoming. Roy and Lynn live in the shadow of the Wind Rivers, so they'll know what I'm talking about. But in the process of going to Knowles, I was 23 years old, getting ready to go to law school, and over that summer, they teach you all the skills that you need to learn to survive in the wilderness. how to read a map, how to hike by the stars, how to make water potable, what to eat, what not to eat, wilderness, first aid, just sort of general everything you can imagine in a baby kind of way as the Mountain Leaders course in Marine Corps that you taught me a little bit about. And at the end of that course, in the last week, you're split up into groups of 5, and you're given a set of maps. And you're supposed to, they show you obviously you know where you are. The leaders show you where they're going to pick you up. And you're supposed to, it's about a 70 to 80 mile hike over 5 days. And the difficult part of it is you fast, you don't eat. So you're hiking at 10,000 feet through a very rugged Wind River range. And you're hungry the whole time. And during the course of those 5 or 6 days, I was in charge of my little group, and I got us irrevocably lost. We were off the maps. Nobody knew where we were. Everybody was tired. They were hungry, and they were all mad at me. So we're at 10,000 feet just above the tree line. We emerge from a deadfall forest, which you have to pick your way through, maybe 250 yards an hour. We come out into this big field, and there are 250 bleating sheep making their noise. And in the middle of the sheep, about from me to the back wall, is this man standing in and amongst the sheep, very tall, very weathered, high cheekbones, strangely dressed, but just a striking presence. The sun was behind him, so I couldn't really see all of him, but he was striking in the fact, first of all, he's in the middle of nowhere with 250 sheep. And when I say in the middle of nowhere, I mean way in the middle of nowhere, right? He's 2 days hike from the nearest human and living off of whatever he can kill or find. And as I got closer to him, I noticed that he had the most incredible green eyes I'd ever seen. Not a normal color of emerald green, Bob, but a color I can only describe as sage. And as you'll hear in a minute, that's how he got his name. But when I finally got to him, I'm thinking, great, this guy's going to show me where we are, how we get out of here. Everybody's going to be happy again, and we'll finish this journey together. He didn't speak a single word of English, not even hello, completely clueless. But standing in front of him, even at 23 years old, he was the most strikingly handsome man I had ever seen. As I said, weathered skin, fit, tall, black hair, green eyes. And even then, there was a sort of a notion of biblical relevance. We're lost. He's a shepherd. There's a bunch of sheep. I'm thinking, okay, this is kind of cool. But we sat down in the dirt, and he kind of, with his dusty hand, traced on the map where we were and how to get out of there. We did not exchange a single word. And I never saw him again. But for 40 years, he lived inside my brain as this sort of otherworldly presence of somebody in the middle of the wilderness who was complete peace with where he was and what his life was. Very unusual thing for me. It just stuck in my brain. Full stop. That's it. That's story number one. As I said, personal only to me, but I never forgot it. The second story will resonate with everybody. You will remember where you were on that day. I landed in Washington on September 11th at 9 o'clock in the morning. As you might remember, communication during that time was not what it is today. There were no iPhones. People still had flip phones. There were no photographs that were instantaneous. The first plane had hit the North Tower of the World Trade Center 17 minutes before I landed. The second plane hit the South Tower at exactly the moment that we touched down in Washington. But nobody on the airplane knew that, right? September 11th, 2001, we had no idea what had just happened. I got in a cab, was headed to meet some friends of mine in the Clinton administration, whom I'd worked with half a decade earlier. And as many of you will know who've been to Washington frequently, the route from National Airport to Georgetown parallels the Potomac on Highway 110, Old Richmond Highway, and the landing pattern for aircraft was always the same. Every 27 seconds, the planes would fly down the Potomac, they'd turn around at Great Falls, they'd fly back up the Potomac, and they'd land. That was the only landing pattern, and it was every 27 seconds. And I'd lived in Washington for 6 years and run along the Potomac every day. And it was like a metronome. It was just, you just watched the planes. It was what everybody did. As we in my cab, which is to say my cab driver, and got closer to the Pentagon, I noticed a plane to my left that, just wasn't where it was supposed to be. And that was really all that registered with me at that moment. As I analogized to, which is kind of a silly analogy, I love birds. We have all these bird feeders, and every now and then there's a bird on your bird feeder that's just not supposed to be there. And you look at it and you go, wow, that's not supposed to be there. And then you go on doing whatever it is you were doing. It's kind of the way it went. Saw this plane. As we got closer, I noticed that the plane banked towards us, and at that moment, I recognized it as a U.S. American Airlines flight, the tail that was recognizable. And it declined steeply, and right as I was in front of the Pentagon, that plane hit the west portico of the Pentagon and killed 168 people. My cab was close enough to rock up on two wheels from the impact. And that was unforgettable. I mean, you don't unsee that, and you don't ever stop thinking about that. And I was 2 or 3 or 4 years old at the time, and those two stories, the first one and the second one, just sort of stuck in my brain until not much later. So my boss in the White House was Leon Panetta. He was Bill Clinton's chief of staff. Leon went on to be head of the Central Intelligence Agency. You referred to the Manhunt series on bin Laden. Leon was featured heavily in there. But I stayed in touch with Leon over the ensuing years, and as information gradually became declassified, and after we had found and killed bin Laden, we knew that the United States government, knew that Al-Qaeda had planned a second attack on the United States. It was supposed to be of a very different nature, but it was supposed to be equally as striking to our psyche as the first. All of us, our relationship with inside spaces has changed fundamentally since 9/11. John Kittredge is not here, but he works in a federal building. To get into that federal building nowadays, you have to go through a magnetometer. There are guards there. There's security that never existed before 9/11. We would drive up to the Greenville-Spartanburg Airport when I was a child. We'd get out of the car 8 minutes before the plane was supposed to take off, and we'd run onto the airplane. You can't do that anymore. The United States has spent $6 trillion since 9/11 hardening our target as America. So I began to think, what would that second attack, and we never knew what that second attack was going to be. If y'all have seen the movie Zero Dark 30, when they take out all of the file cabinets and all the information that bin Laden had, none of it contained any documentation of that second attack. But those two things that were stuck in my head produced what I thought that might look like. And as I have over many years spent a lot of time in the national parks and outdoors, especially in the Wind River Range, I learned, both by being there and reading, last year 336 million people visited the national parks. It is quintessentially an American thing. Nowhere on the planet can you find outside spaces like Glacier, Yellowstone, the Grand Canyon, Zion National Park, Shenandoah National Park, the Great Smokies. So what would it look like if a terrorist attack closed those parks and our outside spaces to us, just as our relationship with inside spaces has been fundamentally changed? What if 335 million visits went to zero? What would it take for that to happen, and how would that unfold? That's what the book is about. And of course, the hero in the book is that Basque herdsman who spoke no English that I met when I was 23 years old in the Wind River Range. He becomes, he sort of morphs in my fiction to half Basque, half Native American from the Wind River Indian Reservation, who is one of the most proficient Marine Corps snipers ever. And Maston helped walk me through how that might happen when I was writing the book, for which I'm deeply grateful. The second book, which I'm finishing now, is very much about the ethos of being a sniper. But that's the plot, and Sage Mendeluz, that Basque herdsman, is the primary protagonist with his dog, Peak, who's an Australian shepherd, and kind of my favorite character in the book. She's right there at his feet. Sorry, long answer to a short question, but that's how and why.
I'm going to do my best to continue at this point, in spite of my extreme disappointment of what I've just learned. I have assumed, I've read the book and it is excellent, and I assumed when I asked him this question that the hero is based on me. And to learn that I've been beaten out by a Basque shepherd? Billy.
The hero's name was Bob, right, to start with, but I had to change it.
Okay, all right, well, I'll get over my disappointment. Well, tell us about your choice of your favorite character, the dog. How did you choose the particular breed, and how did that work?
Well, I backed into the breed. I mean, the reason there is a dog in the book, other than the fact that Teresa and I are huge dog people, Sage Mendeluz, the protagonist, which is very consistent, I think, with the nature of sort of the sniper ethos, is a very intuitive, but also quiet, determined, focused person. He doesn't talk a lot. So there are not a lot of other characters around him, but he had to talk to somebody, and so I picked a dog. He talks a lot to his dog. And the dog, you know, like smart shepherds and border collies, they understand a whole lot of what we say to them, and Sage and Peak have a very symbiotic relationship. But I needed a working dog for purposes of the book. And the dogs we have very unique and wonderful personalities, but they're little tiny dogs, and I couldn't put them in the book. So I came up with an Australian Shepherd. Does anybody have an Aussie? Do you? Well, they are amazing dogs. And out west, Roy and Lynn will know, I mean, you see a ton of Shepherds, Border Collies, very fit, robust, smart dogs that know how to live outside and be very protective of their masters, which is what Peak is.
Mm-hmm. You were at the White House, as I said earlier. How did this experience influence your book and lead it in the directions that it took?
A great chunk of the latter half of the book has to do with a lot of what I learned. So scheduling in advance in the White House is sort of a weird title. Scheduling, straightforward enough. It's how does the president spend his time every day? Who does he meet with? How does all that process work? The advance side of things is slightly more arcane. Every time the president has an event or really does anything, both inside the White House and outside the White House, that was my responsibility, and it is a logistics responsibility. It's everything from Air Force One, Marine One, what the president eats, all the White House communications. But most interestingly and relevant to the book, it's also the advance side of the house is responsible for the United States Secret Service. So we were involved with the service every day in trying to protect the president. And that job is should command the respect of everyone. It is an incredibly difficult job. The president will receive somewhere between 200 and 300 credible threats on his or her life every week, every one of which has to be run down by law enforcement, usually the FBI. If it's of a certain nature, it will be the Central Intelligence Agency or the NSA. And sometimes, at the basic level, local law enforcement can do some of it. But the Secret Service is ultimately responsible for vetting that issue. I started the book just before Putin invaded the Ukraine. I've been fascinated with drones and drone technology from my time in the White House because when Clinton was president, it was sort of the beginning of unmanned, armed weaponry, unmanned aerial weaponry. And so, in those days, it was cruise missiles, Tomahawk missiles, which were large, cumbersome, didn't have as sophisticated a guidance system. And sadly, for the United States, created enormous amounts of collateral damage when they were used. Today, you can trace a number of terrorist cells to events of collateral damage from missile strikes. A Tomahawk missile, generally, is way bigger than that table. The bigger ones are, really long, and it's a sledgehammer. It is not a scalpel. Nowadays, they are scalpels on steroids. There are types of drones that are called kamikaze drones. The one in the book is called a Switchblade. It's about the size of a tennis ball can, fits in a backpack. That piece of technology will go 150 miles an hour at a range of over 6 miles and is accurate within a space of the size of that iPhone right there. You can carry that in a backpack within range of the White House. And so you can imagine what the Secret Service goes through all the time with those kinds of threats present in the environment that they are expected to contain. And so a big part of the book is that sort of nexus between the Secret Service protecting the president and the changing nature of the threats that terrorists now use, whether it's biochemical or drone or whatever. But we've seen in the Ukraine what asymmetric drone warfare is going to look like in the future. And it's terrifying. And, it's terrifying on the battlefield, and it's super terrifying on the White House grounds.
That's scary. Let's go to something less scary than that. Let's talk about how you actually wrote the book. Tell us, did you do it at a certain time every day? Did you handwrite it, keyboard it, dictate it? How did you physically write this?
Pretty primitive. I started out just with a legal pad, and I just said, this is not going to work. So I just took my laptop and started pecking away. Teresa happily and kindly said, you need to do this, and it's COVID, and it's okay. You can go disappear for 6 hours a day for however long it takes. And somebody had given me a great piece of advice. Those of you from Spartanburg would probably know Michelle Stone, who wrote Iguana Tree, and she's quite an accomplished author. She said, if you're going to write a book, write it in a straight line. don't ever look back. If you are worried about what chapter 2 looks like, after, when you're on chapter 3, you'll never get to the end of the book. So just keep writing. So, what, Teresa, 6 months maybe? I wrote about 6 hours a day for 6 months, and never intended to get it published. It sat on my floor for a while. But the stuff was out of my head. The exorcism was complete, so I was satisfied. But, thankfully I had a wonderful friend in Hollywood who runs a big talent agency, and she said, send me the manuscript, and I did, and she liked it, and there it is over there.
Is your friend in Hollywood going to make us a movie?
Well, we hope so. We were out there about 2 months ago trying to pitch it, so we'll see.
Now, there are some hints both on the cover of this book and at the end of the book that there might be another one. Tell us about, would there be a sequel to this?
There will be a sequel. I'm about 85% finished with it. I'm supposed to turn it in February. And first of all, back to your TV and movie, you can't get in a electronic medium like that without a sequel. They need to know that there are more books. For those, I don't know if anybody reads C.J. Box. He's one of my favorite authors. He's a Western thriller writer. He's had 2 series on television. He has 25 bestsellers. It's all the same character who's a game warden named Joe Pickett. That's kind of the recipe. Consistent hero, multiple books that they can draw from. The screenwriters don't want to manufacture a plot. They just want the plot, and they'll write the dialogue and they'll do the hard work, but they need a plot line. And so you got to at least have book 1, book 2, and a plot of book 3.
Your book has a co-author. Tell us about who he is, and how do you divide writing responsibilities between someone when you have a co-author? How does that work?
You see more and more co-authored books these days. James Patterson writes books with Bill Clinton. Louise Penny has written a book with Hillary Clinton, which, by the way, is really good because it's a lot of knowledge that wasn't even fully declassified at the time the book was written. And then there's a whole host of people who do it. Mine was a little different. I'd never written a book before. The agent that I had said, love the plot, love the book, you need some help with the writing. And Dick Lochte, who is a wonderful man that Teresa and I have had spent a little bit of time with not long ago, had written a handful of bestsellers in the 80s and early 90s. He's really a craftsman when it comes to writing. And he was more of an editor than a actual developer of plot, character, and so on. But he did one thing which I think is essential, and I didn't know it was essential. Well, he did 2 things. One is the book was originally 65% narrative and 35% dialogue. And that's about backwards. It needed to be 70% dialogue and 30% narrative. And so he helped teach me how to do that. The second thing, and Dick is a very introverted man, just exactly like you would imagine an author that lives in Hollywood, California. He's 83 years old, and he doesn't talk much, and getting him to communicate is difficult. But almost every time that he had something to say, he would send me an email. One time he calls me on the phone. Originally in the manuscript there were 2 dogs, and I blew one of them up. And he said, I'm telling you right now, you can't kill a dog in a book. He said, take it out, and take it out now. So the blown up dog was taken out of the book, and she actually was named for our dog, Sky. That was her name. And he was right. I did not realize that the average reader of thriller fiction is a 50 to 60-year-old woman. I would never have guessed that. True. When I do these events, that's kind of who's there a lot of the times. The people who come to hear what I have to say, and Dick says they will put the book on their nightstand if you kill a dog, and they'll never pick it back up. So, only one dog, and she survives.
Well, you're fortunate for that advice, because had you killed your wife's dog, more than a hammer would have come down on you.
For sure.
So I was also interested, your character has synesthesia, if I pronounced that correctly,
right.
And it comes up several times in the book. Tell us what that is and what made you put it in.
As some of you will know, the Basque culture in the Intermountain West is a wonderful and very rich culture. It's very insular. They Basque only marry Basque. Very rare to find them marrying outside of their heritage. It's not an ethnicity, it is a heritage. Although they speak, people say, the hardest language on the planet to learn. It's called Euskara, and nobody else speaks that except the Basque. It has no roots in any Romance or other language. It's its own thing, and it's impenetrable to learn. And as a result of their frequent intermarriage, they have certain things that are developed, just sort of like the Ashkenazi Jewish population in Central Europe developed hemophilia and the BRCA gene. It's just from intermarriage things happen. Synesthesia is one of those things that's definitely not prevalent, but it occurs in the Basque culture. Synesthesia is a fascinating condition. Some of the most celebrated songwriters and singers that you all would all have heard of have had synesthesia, like Elton John and a bunch of others. But it is a confusion of senses, and it's an unpredictable confusion. You can smell something that will all of a sudden, colors will flash in front of your eyes. You can taste something and you will all of a sudden smell something completely unrelated to it. It's just the wires and the synapses get crossed in your brain and your senses confuse. The relevance of that, as General Maston taught me a little bit about how the sniper culture works. On the front side of synesthesia, when somebody has it, it's almost like a seizure. And for those of you all who either have had those or know people that have had or have had discussion, most of the time people know if they're going to seize. They have just before it happens, there is a recognition that something is getting ready to happen. Same thing with synesthesia. The people that have it feel it coming, and time slows down for them such that 4 seconds may seem like an hour. And on the other side of that confusion, they have incredible clarity. And it struck me that as a sniper, that backside of synesthesia where your clarity is really unmatched. You can see and perceive and make decisions instantaneously, because for you, what is instantaneous may seem like a 15-minute deliberation. So it's particularly, was for me at least, applicable to what I was trying to create in the main character. And it was consistent with a condition that group, the Basque population, has, as I said, not all over the place, but it occurs more than in the general population.
We've got time for some questions. If anybody would like to ask any questions, and you be thinking if there are any concluding things that you want to say that I didn't ask you. But anybody want to ask anything? Does anybody want to stand up and campaign for a character's in his second book? Yes.
Did you let your wife read the book before you finished?
I'll repeat the question for the video. Did you let your wife read the book before you finished?
I did. I think Teresa read the original manuscript, which ended up changing pretty substantially, but I don't think you read the final book until long after I was finished.
Lynn read it also before.
That's right. You read the dog getting blown up, I think. Well, and I will say, because I see some of my Upstate Warrior Solution friends back there, that I drew heavily on their expertise, Charlie Hall's expertise, Nate's expertise. I used some explosive stuff in the book that they taught me about in real time, and I'm very appreciative.
Yes, sir.
Who would be your ideal Hollywood actor?
Who would be your ideal Hollywood actor to play the lead role?
Well, we've talked about that a little bit. I don't know. But there's a guy whose sister we met on a vacation. Her name is Natalia Boneta. He is Diego Boneta, and he is very well known in Latino television. He's got a native look. He's got, you'd have to make him a little bit older, which they do all the time. I mean, you can make people look young or old or whatever, but he's kind of got that look that's very unique. Sage has to be a very unique looking character, and the actor has to be somebody who can become introverted and intuitive. It's not one of these big expressive Antonio Banderas kind of characters. It's somebody different, but I hope that's a bridge, Walter, that we'll have to cross.
Any other questions? Billy, any concluding remarks? Anything else you wish you could say about the book?
No, not about the book, Bob, but just I'm appreciative that everybody came, and I see so many old and friendly, not old, old as in I haven't, since we just moved back to Greenville, we were gone for 20 years, faces, Chris back there, and my W&L buddy, and so many others, that it's just great to do this back home. I've been doing these events from Bozeman, Montana to Florida, and it's really special to do one here. Thank you.
Well, and Billy, I want to just thank you for your service to the business world, creating jobs and economic development, and to the government, and your service to philanthropy, and now your service to literature. And we look forward to more. Thank you for being with us, and give him a hand. Thank you.